In the 5th lunar month, the water turns. In the 6th lunar month, the water changes its course. By the 7th lunar month, the water jumps out of the bank. The traditional knowledge of predicting water levels, passed down for generations among the upstream residents, is no longer entirely accurate. Climate change, along with numerous upstream hydroelectric dams, have caused the water flow in recent years to become erratic, changing its nature and timing, disappointing the people of the floodplains. The last days of July, we visited the border fields of Buong province, one of the first places to receive floodwaters in the Mekong Delta, to see how this year's water levels are, and how the local residents are preparing for the floods. Here we mainly farm rice, grow crops, and plant corn. Here we harvest in time, though the rice in the upper and lower hamlets is a bit unripe, not fully matured like in the dry season. This year the water came early. Usually it doesn't rise until the end of June. This year, early June and mid-June, the water is rising. If there wasn't this dike, it would flood deep inside. In general, we can't predict the water anymore. Sometimes it rises then recedes again. Sometimes it stops for 1 to 2 months then rises again. The water can't be predicted now. Early May it rose then receded, now it's rising again. In May and June every year, farmers here eagerly await the water's return to enrich the soil for a good rice harvest and prices. For people in the upper Mekong Delta, the flood season always goes hand in hand with their lives and livelihoods, because when the water comes, shrimp and fish come with it. With the recent heavy rains, the upstream residents are hopeful for a good flood season, after many years of waiting for water and fish. At this time, the residents of the Crab Trap village in Nan Hai Commune and Pha district and Buong province are also starting to be active again. The profession operates year-round, but the flood season is when the craft village is busiest. In recent years, field crabs have become a sought-after delicacy, allowing the trap village residents to make a living from their profession, like Mr. Vo Van Mung and his wife, typically to prepare for the main trapping season of the year. Around the 2nd or 3rd lunar month, he would go to Cambodia to buy bamboo, the main material for making traps. They start making stock to have enough traps to supply for the flood season. The crab trap making profession is not heavy but quite labor-intensive, requiring craftsmen to be meticulous with skilled hands to make traps that satisfy customers. After many years connected to the floodplains, the crab trap making profession has helped his family achieve a stable life, supporting their children. Only this year, there is no water until this month. So people are buying. It's better than last year. Last year was very slow due to the pandemic. People bought less. The workload will lighten up soon, but for now, we're in the thick of things. I don't go to the field, so I don't know, but people who go to the field say the water is better this year. When there's water, people buy more. Without water, who would buy? Our people rely on the flood season. Last year, the water came a lot, but people couldn't go to the fields. Life is hard, but you have to work to eat. When you're old and sick, you can't go to the fields anymore. These days, seeing the water rising and flooding the fields, fishermen are bringing their nets down to the fields to find places to set them, starting a new livelihood season. Living in this upstream region, people are used to the rhythm of 2 rice crops and 1 fish crop per year. Fishing is considered as profession passed down from father to son, and is the livelihood of many generations of residents in this upper region. For professional fishermen, whenever they see the water coming, they rejoice and busily wade into the fields to make a living from nature's bounty. Like Mr. Nguyen Wong Min, who has no fields of his own. In the dry season he works as a laborer, and in the flood season returns to work in the flooded fields. For decades, even though the water flow is no longer favorable and contrary to old patterns, the river life has seeped deep into their flesh and blood. It's difficult to let go. The water this year probably won't be high because of the dam situation. It seems it will recede quickly this year. I'll try to make the most of the next 1 to 2 months at most. In the fishing profession, during the flood season we have to try our best because the flood season only lasts 1 to 2 months. After that there's nothing to do. With the rising water this year, our people are very excited. Because there are fish, we can make a living now. The profession is ready-made, it's the same every year. We repair when things break. We rely on just this, some set nets, some set traps, some catch crabs, each person has their own specialty. When the farming season was over, they would find odd jobs like working in the cornfields or rice paddies, or if they had any construction skills, they would work as construction laborers. A morning on the flooded fields of Non Hoi commune. The life begins to bustle. Living in this upstream region, almost everyone knows how to fish. Whenever they see the water rising, they remember their nets, remember the fish, and start preparing their boats to go out to the fields to make a living with the floodwaters. Some fish, some net, some trap, creating the dynamism of the profession, and forming the unique character of the southwestern region when the flood season inundates the fields. In the memory of many residents here, the busiest time of the year is the 3 months when the water rises. Working one season can provide food for the whole year. But that's a story of the past. While in the present, the water flow is becoming increasingly unpredictable, and the bounty of the floodplains has disappeared. Making a living during the flood season has become more difficult. But on the other hand, river fish and field vegetables are now considered as delicacies and fetch high prices. So the floodplain people can still make a living from their profession. Living in the floodplains, this season there's no need to worry about food. Just spending a few hours in the fields provides a meal with all fresh local produce. There's dried braised fish along with an authentic sour soup with field vegetables. Dishes that the city dwellers would find hard to come by. Even though the water flow has become unpredictable, and the floodplain's bounty has decreased, the people of the flooded lands still cling to their fields, and the pace of their profession continues steadily. The optimism and adaptability to the unusual development of each new flood season among the local residents is also seen as a unique trait in the character of the border region's inhabitants. The water came earlier than last year, but I'm worried about the dam situation upstream. Without releasing water from the dam, the water level won't increase. However, if we close the dam, the downstream water will recede into the sea, leaving our fields parched. The water has come early, but I don't know if it will rise much or little. In the past, we could predict based on nature. For example, we look at the bamboo trees, or this tree and that tree. We observe how the tree grows tells us if the water will be high or low. Now, we can't predict. If they release the dam early, the water will rise early. But if they keep blocking it, there won't be much water. It's the same every year. They block it, but eventually they have to release it. Usually the water rises over a meter. When the water rises high for a long time, there are more fish grow larger and can spawn. We hope for more fish in favorable water. We fear unpredictable water because then there's no water, no fish. Leaving Nan Hoi Commune, we're moving to Phu Commune, one of the areas that is considered as the flood navel of Vinh province. Due to the natural terrain here being higher than the border fields of Nan Hoi Commune, at this time, the water has not yet flooded the fields. Here, the land is high and dry, so farming is a year-round profession. But for the fields outside the flood protection dike line, the profession is interrupted by the months when the water rises. Most farm owners are currently focusing on harvesting vegetables to escape the flood, because, according to their estimations, the water will flood the fields in a matter of days. In recent years, corn has been considered the main crop of the Phu field farmers. The most commonly grown corn variety is used for processing livestock and poultry feed. A corn crop lasts as long as a rice crop, but in return, the profits from corn are better compared to rice. So farmers here have decided to switch. Farming on the border fields outside the dike. Farmers have to carefully calculate the crop calendar and face many risks. There have been years when the water has acted irregularly, arriving when the field farmers were unprepared, and turning entire crop fields worthless. But they still choose to tie their lives to the border fields, creating a unique beauty for the border residents. Following the farming season, they transition to fishing, causing their way of life to repeat and solidify into a habit. Growing crops provide stable income but requires field farmers to invest more effort compared to growing rice. Almost every day, farmers must be present in the fields. After harvesting, they move on to preparing the soil for the new season, tending to the crops at every stage, from fertilizing, weeding, leaf cutting, pruning. The work never stops. Recently, seeing that the water doesn't rise high, taking advantage of the high ground in the fields, Mrs. Nguyen Thi Pei and her husband decided to sow an additional crop of green beans. Their first bean harvest is a race against the rising tide. If the water rises too quickly, it's considered a total loss. The business resembles a gamble in opposition to nature. We can only get to harvests from this field, not 3. We pruned these plants too early. We're going to try pruning them again to see if we can squeeze in one more harvest. If God allows us to eat, then we can. If not, then we cannot. This year the water rose earlier than previous years. Last year, it was July, August when the water rose, flooding everything. But this year it's only June. And if there wasn't a dike, the water would have flooded everything already. Building a dam across doesn't let the water in, so we can have corn to eat. In the past 3 to 4 days, the water here has been knee-deep. People in the border region live off farming and fishing. When the water rises and floods everything, the next season we can achieve better results. It's bad if the land doesn't flood. If that happens, we won't have a good yield. We also hope gods will let the water rise high, flooding all the land, so that farmers can have a good harvest, and those who fish can also make a living. On the border floodplains, the story of making a living is still being written. In recent years, the water flow has not been as usual, but always uncertain, difficult to predict. Living closely with nature to maintain their livelihoods, the floodplain people must cling to their fields, choosing for themselves flexible ways to adapt, also creating a colorful picture of labor in the southwestern border region.